Hey guys, how's it going? All right, so today's lesson is about two-step equations. Obviously, it takes 2 steps to solve them. A few problems we're going to go over. There's actually quite a few, but they do cover everything that you probably need to know. So for starters, the whole purpose of to solve two-step equations is to isolate the variable. And what we mean by isolating the variable is to get the letter by itself. So if you take a look, this is our variable in this problem. There's multiplication and there's addition. The first thing that we want to do is try to solve for x. We need to get things away from it. And basically, the easiest thing to get rid of, and it's going to take some practice, but we need to get rid of the easy stuff and then work on what we can. So right now, we've already learned in one-step equations that we can get rid of plus 1 by subtracting 1 from both sides. When we do that, we end up with 3x on the left side of the equal sign. 16 minus 1 is 15. Now we know how to solve this. Because this is 3 times x, we can get rid of multiplication with division. X, well, 3 divided by 3 is just 1. 1x is equal to 15 divided by 3, which is in fact 5. And again, you can always double check this if you wanted. You can plug 5 back into the original problem for x and make sure it makes sense. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 more would be 16. Checks out. Okay, next problem. This situation looks kind of scary because there's negatives. This is a negative 3 minus 2x is negative 11. Again, this looks kind of nasty, but we can get rid of a minus 3 really, really easy. We do that by adding 3 to both sides. Okay, we now have left negative 2x is equal to negative 11 plus 3 is in fact negative 8. Had to think about that for a second. Final step is this is negative 2 times x. To get rid of multiplication, we use division. And remember, you want to divide by the exact same number. In this case, it is negative 2. Negative 2 divided by another negative 2 is in fact positive 1. So we end up getting x equals, and negative divided by a negative is positive. 8 divided by 2 is 4. End of problem. Right? Our third example, very, very similar. We currently have, this one's actually a little tricky because a lot of people forget that this is negative x, but what does that really mean? It means negative how many x's? If you don't see it, it's 1. So this really says 5 minus 1x equals negative 3. In this case, again, it's easy to get rid of a positive 5 by subtracting 5 from both sides. Now, one thing to note, pay attention that we still have that negative x on that side. So we have negative x is equal to negative 3 minus 5 more. That would be, in fact, negative 8. Final step, how do you get rid of a negative 1? Remember, there's an invisible 1 right there. Well, that's negative 1 times x. You get rid of that by dividing both sides by negative 1. Again, this becomes positive x equals negative over a negative is positive. 8 divided by 1 is 8. All right, moving on to number 4. You're going to notice I wrote this exact same problem twice because most of us are used to doing something called distributing. And distributing is where you used to go like this. We would use multiplication to solve this, but check it out. What is 3 times x? That is 3x. 3 times positive 2 would be positive 6, and that equals 9. That's already one step. Second step, you would have to get rid of, obviously, I'm hoping we know that it's the plus 6 to get rid of. We get rid of that with a minus 6 on both sides. And that now gives us 3x is equal to 9 minus 6 is 3. Next, and final step, we would divide, this is 3 times x, so we would divide both sides by 3. Final answer, x equals 3 divided by 3 is in fact 1. Now, there's nothing wrong with the math that we did there. But if you notice, that was more than 2 steps. This was already 1 step, distributing. Second step, we subtracted 6 from both sides. Third step, we divided by 3. That took a lot of steps. You could have fixed it in the very beginning, which is why I wrote it a second time. Isn't this the same thing as 3 times this stuff? So you can get rid of multiplication with division. All right, this is being multiplied by 3. You can get rid of it by dividing by 3. And check out what happens. X plus 2 is all we're left with. And that equals 9 divided by 3 is 3. Final step, you get rid of the plus 2 by subtracting 2. And you're done. X is equal to 3 minus 2, which is 1. Same answer, a lot faster, a lot easier. All right, moving on to number 5. 2/3 x plus 1 equals 5. I hope it stands out that we can get rid of this plus 1 right away by subtracting 1 from both sides. We're now left with 2/3 x is equal to 5 minus 1 is 4. Okay, easy way to get rid of fractions. You always multiply by the reciprocal. Reciprocal means you take the fraction and you flip it. So to get rid of 2/3 times x, we're going to multiply it by its reciprocal, which would be 3/2. But again, if we do it to one side of the equal sign, you must do it to the other. 4, if you needed to make it a fraction, you can. It's 4/1. Any number you need to make a fraction, you can always put it over 1. It'll make your life a lot easier. Look what happens here. 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 3 is 6. And that is all becoming 1. It all goes away. It cancels out. And you're left with just x equals. 4 times 3 is 12. 1 times 2 is 2. And 12 divided by 2 is 6. There's your answer. Okay, moving on to number 6. This is a positive 5. We can start by getting rid of that by subtracting 5 from both sides. We're now left with a negative x/2 equals 9 minus 5 is in fact 4. Now, check this out. We have a fraction here. And what's that number in front of x if we do not see it? We mentioned it earlier. It is 1. So how do I get rid of -1/2? You multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of -1/2 is, it's still negative, but it's now 2/1. If I multiply that side by -2/1, I must multiply the other. We can make this for a fraction if needed. Makes life easier. All of this will become just 1x. And on this side, 4 times -2 is -8. 1 times 1 is 1. And -8 divided by 1 is -8. Okay, I'm showing y'all some fractions and ugly stuff just in case you run into it. All right, we got a couple more just to wrap up this lesson. Word problems, a lot of us struggle with those. We're going to talk about it. So Will earns $200 a day at his job. He has already saved $500 under his giant pillow and wants to buy a gaming laptop that costs him $1,500. We need to know how to write that and then determine how to solve it. Well, guess what? He makes $200. Not once, he makes it every day. So we know that's $200 every day. We're just going to call that D. Okay. Also, he saved $500. Is that plus 500? Is that minus 500? It's a one-time amount. So he already has $500. And he wants to buy something that costs him in total, it equals $1,500. That's your equation. D represents the number of days he works. They want to know how many days does he need to work for us to be able to buy this. So again, first step, we can get rid of the plus 500 first by subtracting 500. We're left with 200D is equal to 1,500 minus 500 is 1,000. Final step, 200 times D. We can get rid of that with division. Final answer, D equals, if you didn't know this, you can cross out some zeros to make your life easy. What's 10 divided by 2? It is in fact 5. He must work 5 days to be able to buy his laptop. Okay, last two examples I put up here simply because they get mixed up a lot from my students. Sorry, my kids are in the background. So these two get mixed up between students very often, what the first step is. A lot of people want to get rid of this minus 5 or this plus 5 right here by subtracting 5, but you cannot. And the reason why is this whole thing is being divided by 2. The whole thing, the 5 included. So you have to get rid of this division first. So to get rid of divided by 2, you got to multiply both sides by 2. Now you're left with an easy problem. X plus 5 is equal to 16. Final step, to get rid of plus 5, we subtract 5. X is equal to 11. All right. Now, problem almost the same, but a little bit different. Now notice where the plus 5 is. It's not under the fraction. It's on its own. We can get rid of that right away by subtracting 5 from both sides. We now have x over 2 is equal to 8 minus 5, which is 3. Okay, next. X is being divided by 2. How do we get rid of division? I think you know that already. We would multiply both sides by that number. And now we get x by itself, which was the whole purpose of the problem. X is now 3 times 2, 6.